Hi, I'm Rebecca Downs, original music artist from Birmingham, UK. Welcome to Series 3 of my podcast Downs Your Way in association with Blues in Britain magazine. For further details of me, the magazine, or my guests, please follow the links in the show notes below. If you can hear squeaking in the background, I'm afraid that's Ralph, my dog, squeaking his toy. The theme of this series is the current state of the music business, and in the last two episodes I've spoken to two artists, Sarah Shaw and Chantal McGregor. This week I'm jumping off the stage again to talk to Ross Muir of fabricationshq.com. Ross has been involved with the music business in several capacities for many years, and I'm looking forward to getting his perspective on the current scene. Right, just before this lovely gentleman comes on the podcast, we've got somebody else on the podcast today who, is not a musician, but he's a very known and influential person on the scene, knows a lot of things about what's going on the scene, has an amazing website where, so supportive of loads of artists on the scene and loads of other stuff actually, and just basically a top bloke. So, Ross Muir, it's brilliant to have you on.
Well,
A little introduction about what you do. Just tell the folks about
yeah,
fabrications.
cool. Yeah, what I do. Yeah, I think like so many in my area of expertise, if that's the phrase, and what I do with Fabrications HQ, that's not the background. For the last 45 years until I retired 2 years ago, I was in architecture. Now, that's not really any sort of revelation because so many people that do what I do that have a blog site or a website or want to report on gigs or just get some press or PR out there and do what they can to support artists that deserve that support are all doing other jobs. This is usually the fallback or the secondary. What's really interesting from my point of view is way back in the day, this is the late 70s, when I was just about to leave school, I was convinced I would be in music. It might be something to do with press and PR. It could even be vocal coaching because I was in competition choirs for a couple of years, even after school. I loved music from classical to pop to rock to prog, you name it, I listened to it. So I really thought that was a possibility. I also was not too bad at graphic art. So what Hypnosis are doing, or were doing even back in the day, with their album artwork, I thought that's something I could explore as well. So that was an option. Comic book art was a secondary option, but as I was told when I left school, that's all America based. Unless you're in America, that's not going to work. And one of the teachers simply said, have you thought about an apprenticeship in architecture? Because that's the go-to. Do that, run an apprenticeship, and if it works because you're exceptionally good with spatial awareness and technical drawing and your 3D, etc., you're ahead of the game there. So I would highly recommend that. If you don't like it or it doesn't work out, absolutely try and fall back into music or something else. But I think even then, which is even truer now, he said it's almost 0.1% who are going to make it in music. Keep that in mind in whatever avenue of music you want to pursue, but try the architecture. So I quite innocently thought, yeah, okay, I'll give it a go, thinking it wouldn't come to anything. And then 45 years later, I retired from architecture, but Fabrications HQ had been running for 10 years prior to me retiring. Because when the credit crunch came in '08, I think everyone was thought, well, shit, this could be it. This could be the curtains coming down. What else can we do? So I fell back to something I'd done in the late 70s through to the early 80s, and that was writing reviews. Started with a fanzine for school, and then it became fanzines for local record shops and sent to gigs to cover them, etc., and talked to some of the bands. So I was very comfortable doing that. So I just fell naturally back into it, albeit it was like 35 to 40 years later. And slowly but surely built up a reputation through my writing and the way I conduct interviews and the fact I can also drop into PR, do press releases, do some bio. I've done CD liner notes. I've stage managed. I've done a bit of road crew. I've done load in and load out. Whatever needs done, I'll do. But the bottom line is it's really all about supporting music when it needs supporting the most. And that is exactly where we are now. You just have to look at Glastonbury and Oasis, who have just kicked off their tour
Yeah.
to the grassroots level and see that ill balance we have. It's never been this skewed. And I honestly don't see a way back. So the more of us that can chip in and at least try and make it work for as long as we can, is really my modus operandi.
Yeah, I mean, for those that, don't know, if you go to Fabrications HQ, is it .com? I'm pretty sure it's
.com, yeah.
.com. Um, Ross and people like Ross give, independent grassroots. I know a lot of people don't like the term grassroots, but artists like myself, coverage, help, support. Ross is always like helping people out with, picking venues in the area he's operating in and the area he knows, Scotland, and just a great supporter of live music, but somebody who's like really, really always helped out artists and always sort of, and from my point of view, helped me right from the start. And also just somebody that talks straight. It's quite a, you know, it's quite a high bar in this, even in this
Yeah,
even in
yeah,
this sector, somebody that will just speak honestly to you is kind
well,
of, that's a high bar to ask of. And Ross is that man.
I,
So don't
I,
pull no punches, people.
no, no, you're right. I don't. And I appreciate that. And somebody said to me not long ago, and I think it's true of a lot of artists, particularly the ones that I work with and would like to see get further up the ladder. Somebody said the only problem, Ross, that you've got is you were born or started this 20 or 30 years too late. Because back when we had serious journalism and what I call open and honest journalism, and if I do a review and if there's a criticism, the criticism's in there for a bloody good reason.
Mm,
It's not necessarily because I don't like something. I'm still trying to be as um, objective as I can be in what is a very subjective subject. You only like what you like and you dislike what you dislike. But not every album is perfect. Not every artist puts on a perfect live performance. And
yeah.
I've always been that way in conversation and interview and review. Every review I do is positive, with one or two exceptions which are intentionally put out if I feel that somebody genuinely needs called out because they haven't done a good job. And what's
Mm,
interesting is I've had a lot of artists who have become really good friends, and some are fairly big names that have had their day in the industry. Have gone back and said they greatly appreciate that because how will they learn or understand what people are really getting from the music if somebody doesn't flag up and say, just a minute, there was one song in particular where I think the middle eight wasn't quite as strong as it could have been, or it sounds like it was jammed in between, the verse chorus and verse chorus, just
mm.
little things like that. And they appreciate that conversation because then they go back and think, well, if Ross is thinking that, how many others are thinking that? But don't want to say. And that's a great point you made because I am the exception to the rule in the sense that
You are.
most of my other peers will tell you every album is 10 out of 10 or 11
Yes.
out of 10 or this is the best thing they've done or grab them now before they start hitting the stadiums because they just want what's best for their readership and they want what's best for themselves. They want to be in with the in crowd. And I've never bought into that and I never will. So it's
Ross,
really,
this is such a big thing. And, you know, people might hate me for saying this, but I think it's one of the major issues of the blues and blues rock scene that
yeah,
everyone is a 10 out of 10. Just like you said, every album's amazing. Every gig, they've blown the roof off.
yeah.
Yes, it's great. And sometimes people do blow the roof off, but it's all subjective. But if everyone's amazing, then no one's amazing. And then if people from outside looking in at that scene who may be interested in going to a gig listen to an album that somebody's gone, yeah, this is like the best thing that I've ever heard in my life, and go, hang on a minute, that's actually not. And I know everyone's got their own opinions, but you know what I mean. Like if everything's amazing, then nothing's amazing, and I really do think that's a problem. But maybe does that come from like payola? Do we think is that a problem as well? Like
Yeah, yeah.
treading lines here. I'm treading lines here.
I think from my side of it, when I look at a lot of, I'm saying exception to the rule, that's very unfair. There's a lot of other people out there that are writing exceptionally well and doing the same sort of job and want to be honest in their critique, if you like, but still support the artist. But
Mm,
generally speaking, it's skewed towards this bias of everything is awesome, everything is cool. I honestly do think that simply comes from these people want everything sent their way. They don't want to criticize in case they lose out somewhere,
mm,
or maybe that PR company or manager or artist or label won't send them anything again if they dare to criticize so much as one bar of
mm,
one song. I know for a fact that I have less impact as far as published quotes now because of the way I write, because I refuse to do that. If you look at my website, best of luck finding the word awesome anywhere
mm,
in it, for example, that sort of thing. And then the onomatopoeic style that you get from so many, where it's a thrashing guitar or clashing cymbal or thumping drum. I mean, Jesus, that just drives me up the wall. But it gets used because that's the sound bites that people want. So it's lowest common denominator, and that's an absolute tragedy. And it also drags the artist down to the same sort of level in the sense it all becomes lowest common denominator. And that could even be a reason why we're not getting the crowds in, because people don't see it as something vibrant, something fresh, something they should be going to see. As I said earlier, it's almost like BBC saying, if you can't go to Glastonbury, you absolutely must sit down and now watch this wall-to-wall coverage, because
mm,
this is the be-all and end-all. It would just be nice for them to run a couple of things on, as you said, the grassroots industry, the club level circuit, where it all started. I mean, Christ almighty, how many bands in Glastonbury, or artists, or solo artists, or whatever, started their life in pubs and clubs and
mm,
grassroots? Probably about 80%, if not more. So we don't seem to celebrate that. We don't seem to educate anybody about that. And that's, yeah, I obviously, you can, you can tell even from my voice,
mm,
I have a serious problem with that. So
mm,
anything I can do to keep punters coming into that level, to watch these bands playing and doing their damnedest, whether they're playing in front of 15 people or 150, these guys and gals are knocking their pans out to play
mm,
the best set they can for those individuals that come to see them. So there's the grassroots music level, and then there's the entertainment industry. And the
yeah.
entertainment is your Glastonbury, and it's your Beyonce, and it's your Adele's, and it's your Springsteens, and Taylor Swift's, and they're fine. And to be fair, some of them are exceptionally good at what they do, and that's great. But the point I've always been trying to make, and on the website, is that's just 1% of 1% of the
Yeah.
music on this planet. And there's so much more for you to enjoy. If one, you would just go and see it, but two, you would need that prod to say, this is why you should go and check these bands out. And other
Mm.
than sites like Fabrications and some of the magazines that are out there and conversations like this, I don't see a bigger picture where anybody's swinging in to help.
No, I know. And I've been talking to a lot of people, again, artists, but also people like yourself who are, not artists, but are heavily involved in the scene, at quite a fundamental level, Um, and again, I'm not saying that, somebody will say, oh, well, I'll criticize your next album, Rebecca. Well, if you really like, if you can stay away from being bitchy and you're going to be
Mm.
constructive,
Yeah.
I'll take it, because everyone has a point of view and that's fine. But it's just, yeah, it has been something that's been bugging me for a long, long time because, all the questions coming back at me from all the people that I've spoken to is how do we get people to come and take a chance on these gigs and these festivals and festivals that you've been involved with,
Yeah.
how do we get, because all the numbers are going down.
Yeah.
So there's issues, isn't there? There's a variety of issues, but that's, I think, definitely one of them. We don't have to knock people, but we don't have to over exaggerate either.
Yeah, yeah. You've touched, obviously touched. You've actually hit the nail on the head with the problem, and the problem is a problem that can't be solved, and that is numbers. It's almost, let me drop back a little bit. It's like think of a triangle. Somebody draws on a blackboard or something. You've got 3 points on that triangle. At the top, you've got your legacy acts or established acts. or heritage acts, call them what you will. So Springsteen, Taylor Swift, Eagles, hundreds of them. They're fine and dandy. They've got the legacy, they've got the history, they've got the back catalogue, and here's the kicker: they've got the fan base, but that fan base every single year, like the bands, gets 1 year older.
Yeah.
Now, when we got through COVID, etc., quite rightly, a lot of people said, "I'm not too sure." They weren't too sure about going out to gigs or any sort of function, but there's a lot of numbers. I get that. You've also got, as you get older, you get more ailments, etc., etc., and you do get, your confidence can get knocked. So there is no point in monkeying about with this. The hard fact is, every year there will be a diminishment in numbers because the fan base, if you like, for blues rock bands, generally speaking, I'm not talking about the heritage acts or those that are making, serious money on seriously big tours, but at this lower level, small halls, small theatres, grassroots level, they get older, we get older. Now,
Yeah.
that's great if the next generation is coming through, but they're not. And that's not their fault. That's simply where we are as a culture across the planet. You think about where we are since the millennium kicked in. It's not just the fact that it was a 20th century and a 21st century. It's just become such a different place globally, where it's iPods, iPhones, anything you want, you can get on social media, etc. If you want to go and see a gig, you don't have to, because it'll be on YouTube the next day. And that's the cry I get from I'd say about 8 out of 10 of what I refer to as younger generations, whether that be in teens, 20s, or even into 30s now.
Yeah.
And then this goes back to this, there's no push or interest for them to go and see grassroots level artists. Why would they? They can go and see the heritage acts that their parents went to see, or even their grandparents maybe went to see, because that is what they've been told is the bee's knees. And then you've got the second point of that triangle. As they start to fade out, the larger acts, you've got the tribute acts, and the tributes, who are now emulating those heritage acts, are doing bigger business than ever. This is just a fact, and there's no point in bitching about this. Like them, loathe them, or love them, or somewhere in between, or have ones you like and will go and see.
Sure.
Doesn't matter. They are here to stay. That's
Yeah.
a hard fact. The third point of your triangle kind of catches both, is what we talked about earlier. It's the event. It's the event that you go and see, or what you're told to go and see, because this is the thing you must go and check out. So it's the large auditorium, it's the arena. It could be multiple rock bands. It could be 3 heritage acts. It doesn't matter. That's where you gravitate to. The other thing that happened recently, and unsurprisingly was rammed, was Ozzy doing his little set and then the Black Sabbath set. Now, there was quite a lot of talk about, well, I don't think I want to go and see that poor soul now, the state is in. I'm not sure I'd pay that money. But everybody knew it was going to be absolutely rammed out.
Yeah.
So this is interesting that, as long as these guys are still breathing, they will come.
Yeah.
But we can't get those numbers coming through at the lower level. And the younger generation have got so many other things of interest that becomes an interest in other fields. It becomes a disinterest in the grassroots music. And in between those 3 points in the triangle, bang center is the grassroots level trying to howl at any of those 3 points to get a leg up.
Yeah.
It's not going to change. There is no clever answer. It's just about trying to get the Music Venue Trust, and I mean, say what you like about Coldplay, and I am certainly not a fan, the fact they're dropping 10% of the UK shows back into the Music Venue Trust. Here's the thing though, that's great, but I could argue that really bands like Coldplay should have been doing that for the last 10 years, because they're doing all right. Their bank accounts are okay.
I would say so.
So if they'd all done that, and here's another really interesting point. What if you take every band that's playing arenas or large auditoriums, and if you're not going to put a price limit on the tickets, because they're just getting out of control now, hundreds of pounds, whatever. If they even pulled them down to a certain level, let's just, as a roundup, let's just say a £100 ticket. For every ticket that's sold, £1, just £1 of that 100 goes into the Music Venue Trust, or into a grassroots community, if you like, or a piggy bank for it. And that money gets spilled back into doing what they can to push hard to keep these places alive and thriving, and find ways and means through social media or whatever it may be to convince people that this is something to go and look at. This is still something that's worth pursuing. This is still a gig that's worth going to see. But it needs the big boys and girls to do that. It needs something like £1 on every ticket. It needs the BBC. It needs all these conglomerates to buy into that. And my worry, Rebecca, is that we will never see that because it's dying on its arse, frankly. And I have so much time, and I can't tell you how much credit I would give to the people that are still running clubs and doing what they can and running at a really good level and getting bands in at good numbers. But every year, I'm saying every year, what, every month, every 2 months, you and I know we're going to lose a club, we're going to lose a venue, or they're going to change tack and make themselves maybe something like a late night club for DJs because the bands aren't pulling the right numbers. So that I know that's very doom and gloom, but that's part of the point of this conversation and everybody that listens to it. I would love to hear other people's thoughts on what do we do? Have
Yeah.
you got an answer? Because I and dozens of us up here have talked round the table for hours and we end up with the same point that there's less numbers every year and even less numbers on that coming through behind them. So it can only be diminishing returns. So I don't know that anyone's got the answer other than, as we talked about earlier, the people that the support network, if you like, Fabrications HQ being one, just keeps going and just keeps pushing and just keeps supporting these artists that back in the day, and again, it's the whole thing about, doing it 20 to 30 years too late. You will never ever see again the A&R guys with a label that will help the artists and repertoire guys that will help out a band. That again, whether it was honest critique, you might yourself walk in with a demo of 10 tracks and say, I think I've got 10 dynamite songs here. And I'd like them to get to a bigger audience because I think they deserve that. And I'd like to get airplay. Back in the day, you get somebody very honest who knows the scene and knows the system would say, actually, I think you've only got 4 or 5 dynamite songs there. But let's do something with that. Let's give you a retainer. Let's get into the studio. Let's get the demos worked up to fully produce numbers, get an EP out, and we'll do what we can. And we'll start pushing on it. Well, those days have gone as well. That's the thing.
They are. They are
Yeah.
gone. And there's a whole reason why they are gone as well. We've got the music industry and the live music industry on a real downward slope because, as I've been discussing with others, if music is free and
Mm-hmm.
streaming is here to stay, there's nothing we can do about that. And everyone goes on about Spotify. I do a lot, and the bots and all the rest of it. But
Yeah.
YouTube's kind of worse. There's a lot. There's a lot of different ways to consume music for free, and it's just ripped the value out of it. And as soon as the value goes out of it, I think it's had this knock-on effect. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like the genie's not going to go back in the bottle,
Dead
but
on.
you've got these different angles as well, haven't you? Like these streaming, get all the music for free angles. Some Whether it will, probably not. It needs kind of tightening around that somehow, some
Yeah.
way, but whether it can, because every time Spotify, and I'm repeating myself, but puts up their price by like £1 a month, they lose tens and hundreds of thousands of subscribers because they put it up by £1.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Yeah. It's that's a really interesting point. It's the one thing I hadn't mentioned. For the same sort of reason, I find it hard to even say the word Spotify. But I get it. I get why it's there. And yeah, absolutely. And it is serving a purpose. And I've had many a conversation, as I'm sure you've had with artists who say, absolutely, we are being ripped off left, right, and centre. We're bottom of the food chain on Spotify. However, I put a song out or a single, and even over one day it got 35,000 streams. Suddenly 35,000 people know about me, or might like the song, or might tell somebody about the song. So I get there's pros and cons. But yeah, the whole Spotify thing, dead on. That's really the day music died for me in the sense that it became devalued. It's no longer an artistry. It's now a marketable commodity, Rebecca, and that's down to Spotify. There is no value other than the 9.99 or the 10.99 you pay to hear just about every song in the world
Yep.
on your iPhone or whatever. With your little earplugs in. Hence again, why would I want to go to a gig? I can pick up anything I want on my phone or jump on my computer. And for a tenor, I've got the whole musical world in front of me. So that, yeah, you're right. That's not going to change either. But that was probably the final nail. And then if you jump on one step beyond this, which is even worse from our point of view, how many, well, somebody did the maths on it and I've forgotten because I don't have it in front of me, but how many AI generated songs go on Spotify a day? It's thousands upon thousands upon thousands. And of course, I'm sure you saw it because it was quite a big news item last week or the week before of one of the thousands of artists that are AI generated. The one that's making the biggest news is the Velvet Sundown.
Yep.
The sort of psychedelic retro late 60s, 70s sound, but it's clearly AI'd. And that's an interesting one because it also touches on the thing you just mentioned about numbers. Somebody that wrote the article said it's astonishing to think they've got between 350 to 500,000 listeners or people buying
Mm,
into it. You think, no, they haven't.
no, they
That, no,
haven't.
they absolutely, and you're right, they haven't, because that's bought and paid for, and I mean BOT bought and paid for. But it
Sure
tells a
is.
story, though. That's the thing.
It's got a story though, isn't it? They've hit the headlines, so they've got even more people listening to it now.
Yeah,
And people will probably say, "Well, Rebecca, how the hell do you know it's all bots and that?" It's quite easy to tell.
I think so.
Um,
Yeah,
all you do is you have to do it on your laptop, guys. You can't do it on your phone, your iPad, or whatever.
yeah.
But just go onto Spotify, go to the About, where it's the artist page, but go to About and just look where the streams are. If
Yeah,
you Google bot or bot playlist countries, it will tell you what those countries are. Also, if a band is in Hertfordshire, and they're just for example a grassroots band and they're in Hertfordshire, why the hell would all their listeners be in Turkey? That's all I'm saying.
yeah,
You figure it out, guys. You're intelligent
exactly.
people. I know
Yeah,
you've got
exactly.
this.
Do the math, guys.
And
Yeah,
I'm not knocking anyone because one, they might not know that those are bot plays that they paid for.
mhm.
They might not know. Two, I understand the desperation because that's how we're measured now. Once it was Facebook numbers, then it was Instagram numbers,
Yeah,
then it was YouTube numbers,
yeah.
and everyone was buying YouTube fake
Oh,
streams
Christ,
and
yeah,
even
yeah,
fake comments. People, you can buy fake comments. Jesus Christ.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and there is websites that will show you that as well. If you go to socialblade.com, you don't have to get a paid for account, but you can again, you need to know kind of what you're looking for. But if you put in somebody's Instagram account, if somebody's shot up by like 700 people in a month or 3,000 people, they've
yeah,
paid for
yeah.
that. Unless they've been on national television, they've
Mm,
paid for that.
yeah,
So, but I get it. As an artist, I get it. Because all anyone does is go, oh, but she's only got so many
yeah,
Spotify monthly listeners
yeah,
and that band's got 10,000.
yeah.
Yeah, but none of those 10,000 guys are going to come to a gig because they're in Brazil.
It's exactly that.
That's
Yeah,
all I'm going to say. But I get it. I get
yeah,
it, guys. I frigging get it because I feel the desperation. The desperation is real. I've been in some really bad places, and I'm
yeah,
sure a lot of artists have as well. And but all I'm doing with this as well and these podcasts is saying to people, you don't have to do that. You can be real,
yeah.
and that's what I tell my students because if you there's no point. You can't go paying for this stuff. Don't go paying for it. Just be real. Try and create a community. So that's one of the things I was going to ask as well, Ross, because you're like heavily involved in the PR around certain festivals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, like, what's the difference between like pre-COVID and now with some of the festivals you're involved, because you're involved in this scene?
Yeah, quite dramatic. I mean, there's no point in kidding on or trying to be optimistic. I give it the whole glass half full. One of the ones I run, that's again not the right comment, I assist with, is the Glasgow Rock and Blues Festival, which Stephen Stanley of Solid Entertainment works. It's one of Stephen's babies, and a lot of people know Stephen. Another guy works his arse off to try and get as
He
many
sure
festivals
does.
across the UK as he can, but he's seeing a downturn as well. And yeah, I mean, there's no question COVID made a difference, but what a lot of us up here and the venues I tend to work with and the bookers I work with that I know, we've all seen, and it's really, I would say, in the last 18 months or so, It's really quite strange. It's like somebody just turned a light off or turned a tap off. There was a dramatic downturn. The Blues Fest is the Glasgow one is an interesting marker because okay, a couple of times it came one came close to selling out. One did sell out, other than maybe 20 tickets short. This is in the Oran Moor venue in the west of Glasgow, west end of Glasgow, which is a lovely, lovely venue. Um, and we were delighted with that. And the PR and press I was doing was getting enough numbers in to make it work. And then the last couple, second last one, we thought, oh, numbers are down, but still manageable. And then there's no point in kidding on, and Stephen would tell you this too. The last one was so low that it lost money. And you think, well, what happened? Because the bands we had on were still very good, great lineup. I still did the same amount of PR and press. Stephen still pushed hard. So yeah, this is kind of my very early point about the numbers diminishing. It's maybe not every year, it's maybe every 6 months. It's just every 6 months or so. As an example, let's just say 1,000 people decide not to go to gigs anymore, or can't do it, or won't do it, or step back. Or perhaps it's simply because we do 2 a year, they can't afford to do it. Think I'll just go to one every year. That's possibly part of it. But for every 1,000 that stop going to a gig over a 12-month period, coming through behind them, 100, 200 people maybe. So that's the drop off. So yeah, even the festivals and Shock City Productions, who are a great little team up here of a couple of my friends that do extremely well. Not just Glasgow, they've been down in Newcastle and the north of England, the Midlands, putting gigs on, and they get good numbers. But even they've said recently, it's got to the stage where bands that they would have no hesitation in putting on because they know they would get the crowds, they now have to double take to think, well, shit, look at the pre-sales or lack of. We can't guarantee this is going to work. So I can't tell if that's a UK-wide thing, but up here, we clearly have a lower population. We have lower numbers potentially going to a gig anyway. So we've seen the drop-off is so dramatic, I'd hate to say, but I think if this stays the same, if this diminishment, if you like, stays the same, then within the next 3 to 5 years, it won't be sustainable. And it could be within 10 years, there is no grassroots level or small theatre festivals because the numbers just don't make it work. And again, I know we're now sounding like a broken record because this is what we started to discuss. But unless we come up with an answer, that's the bottom line. How long do you and I have, you as an artist and I as a writer, writing about these artists, have to do this? And it might well be that 3 to 5 years with a 10 max out. And that's just, it's a horrible thing to say, but it's also a harsh reality of the situation.
It is. And of course, because the labels have kind of left the building, it's to a great, because even with deals these days, they're not actually deals in like they were before.
Yeah.
So a lot of artists are either turning them down or because the deal isn't right. So a lot of it is, financial as well for artists, and the amount of money they can spend, the amount of money they've got backing them, all that kind of thing is a massive player in this field. If you've got an open checkbook, which is, God bless you if you have.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just the luck of the draw. It's what it is. But it makes life a hell of a lot easier because really to push yourself now, you've just got to either buy on to loads of tours or get on the tours as supports. And of course, that's just a huge investment every time.
Yeah.
Because even if you're not buying on, if you're going to get paid, if you're just not going to get paid for it, you got to exist. You've got to get to the gigs. You've got to feed people. You've got to pay musicians. It's like, one tour can cost for a support thousands of pounds. Believe me, I know.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say.
Of course you do. And that's the other thing that I think, bigger picture-wise, which is why it's a struggle, because through COVID and just as we talked about the diminishments, etc., the venues that are still wanting to run, or whether they're owned or leased to somebody else or a third party, whatever it may be, they don't want to lose money. They want to find a way to survive with their live bands or their club nights later on, the dreaded curfew. We're all back home by 10 o'clock watching Graham Norton when the clubs kick off, whatever it may be. But they've got to find a way to survive. So they're paying more now for security. They're paying more for staff at the bar. They're paying more for their heating. They're paying more for whatever else, electrics, make sure the ventilation system's working, etc., etc. But that doesn't equate to the band or the artist. They still seem to be on that token amount they were told they would get a year ago or 4 years ago or 5 years ago. And some people think, okay, again, this is a number I'm making up in case people think, well, really? Let's say a band is offered £600 for a gig, right? You're right, though. If that gig is part of a tour, and that £600 is between, let's say, four and a tour manager, or maybe the driver of the van, and then getting that van to that venue and the petrol, and then the hotel and motel for 1, 2, or 3, or 4 bedrooms, and then a breakfast in the morning before you head off. Well, your £600 disappeared very, very quickly. But that's not far off what, give or take, some of these bands will expect to get, sometimes less. If you get up the ladder higher, absolutely, then you come into your 4 figure, your 1,000 deal. But what I find extraordinary, and again, it's just where we are, there's no point discussing it, it's just where we are. One of the points of the triangle I mentioned there are top pedigree, all original touring bands who will happily take 300, 400, £600 for a gig, and they head out of Dodge to the next gig, and a tribute slides in and they won't get out of bed for less than £1,000 because they know they'll pack the place out. I didn't think we'd ever see that. I knew the tributes would swing in and get a foothold and do very well. And, as you said earlier, well, good luck to them if people want to do that. That's great. But the fact that they can command close to twice the price of a touring band and all the original acts are knocking albums out every couple of years is absolutely extraordinary. It's one of those laugh or cry things. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a few tributes I know and I've worked with. There's one I've worked with in the past and was on the road with them for about 6 days to do an article on them because they're a bloody exceptional band. But the fact that we've got to that stage where it's events and tributes and payments to everybody else, firstly, your bookers, your agents, your labels, and your venues, and then, oh yeah, the artist, sorry, we got any money left for the artist? Jesus, and Spotify's a great indicator of that 0.003. The artist is last in line when the paychecks are made from Spotify. It's a very strange world, Rebecca. And as I said before, I don't see any quick, slow, or immediate, or even long-term answers. I don't.
It is a strange world, and I didn't mean to, but I've upset people by there's been a few festivals and gig venues or gig promoters contact Colin,
Yeah,
and say, hey, we can offer you X amount for this gig or for this festival. And we've had to go back and go, that's not going to cover our costs.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
that isn't me taking a big payment, and that isn't Steve either.
No,
Because neither one of us have ever took a penny from a gig. It goes back
yeah,
into the band.
yeah.
So that's with me and Steve not taking payments, right? We are not, basically, we'd be paying to play. Now, a few have been honest and come back to me and go, well, there's loads of bands say they'll do it.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's fine again. If bands want to do that, that's up to them. I cannot afford to subsidize a gig. And I've been speaking to a lot of people on the record, off the record, who've just, who've been saying, I've added it up. And at some gigs, I know I've been paying to play.
yeah, yeah.
I can't do that. I can't do it. I cannot do it. A lot of people have the resources to do it. I can't. So people look at the website and they go, why aren't you playing here? Why aren't you playing there? It's like, because I don't think I can guarantee, if it's on ticket sales, I need to be able to guarantee we're going to make a certain level. And I need to be able to guarantee that to the promoter. And if me and him can come into an arrangement, like I have done before, we're okay, because I put my back into selling those tickets. But I can't, if somebody offers us a flat fee that's below what I'm going to need to pay out. I can't do that. I just can't do it.
Yeah,
And
and
as I
hence,
say, that ain't me and Steve going, hey man, we need like hundreds of pounds each.
yeah.
That ain't been happening.
No, I know you very well, and I absolutely know that that's the way you would work and operate, and you couldn't do it any other way. But that's another good point, though. Um, and this goes back again to the devaluation of music as an art form, in the sense that there are bands that will happily now pay somebody to get the chance to do half an hour at a gig, or
Yeah.
should they buy onto a tour. I see it in my side of it, on the other side of the PA. Somebody said to me, and something I didn't mention, of course, the fabrications HQ is a passion. I don't make money out of it other than if I'm doing press or PR or a sleeve note or a liner note. The agreement I have is I happily say, look, just put 50 quid in my PayPal account and let me know, what do you want, a 500 word bio? That's fine. Or do you want something on the website updated? That's
Mm.
fine. Or 300 words on a CD sleeve note? Fine. And that way I'm not scaring the tax man, and that's great. And it suits me fine. But when somebody said, and I took it as the greatest compliment, actually, again, it was, fairly big name that said, your writing is exceptional. Back in the day, this would have been something you would see in Mojo magazine, etc. Said, I hope you're being paid handsomely. And I actually burst out laughing. I said, the problem is, and I said, and bands have got the same problem. If I submit something or somebody asks me to do something, and I say, okay, but it is going to cost you a fairly decent fee because I know I'm good at this, and I know some of my stuff can be exceptionally good. I absolutely abhor false modesty. And I know what I can do well and what I can't. And this is one of my go-tos. I said, if I ask for the sort of money I think I should get, they're going to go to somebody else. And it's got to the stage where they'll go down the line until they get somebody who's an average writer who would actually pay somebody in PR or at a label to have their stuff used. That's what I'm up
Yeah.
against. And it's exactly the same as you on your side of the PA. You're quite right. I so admire you for standing your ground and saying, we can't do that, we won't do that. But there's a band right behind you, jumping up and down, waving their arm there, saying, look, if we pay you, could we get the gig? And
Mm.
that's just, again, it goes back to this extraordinary time we live in. And that's where we are.
Or saying, people have said to me, yeah, well, I've got bands that, just say they'll come and do it for nothing. I'm like, well, and it's almost like having a go at
Yeah,
me for
yeah,
like saying I'm not going to do it for 10 pence and a large
yeah,
apple. Do you know what
yeah,
I mean? It's like,
yeah.
and as I say, they've fallen out with me. They've never invited me back. They've never said, "Oh, can we come to some arrangement? Can we?" And it's not that I've got my hand out going like this. It's literally I'm just trying to break even sometimes. Literally just trying to break even. And it's like
That's
you're asking too much money. It's like, well, what? Well, I'm sorry that I'm asking too much money. I'm literally just trying to break even.
that's
That's it.
that should be the t-shirt. Just trying to break even.
Just
I've
trying
had
to
a, yeah,
break even.
I've had a conversation with, again, a couple of a good friend of mine in the States. Hasn't been over here for a long time for obvious reasons. Can't make it work. Climate, can't get the numbers. And I did say to him, in all seriousness, I said, in all seriousness, if I could find a way to get you over or talk to the right guys, what would you need? And I kid you not, that was his. I mean, this is somebody coming from the States. That was his comment. I just need to break even,
Mm.
because he knows what the situation is now like. 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, wouldn't shift if you didn't think there was 10 to 20 grand in it. Now, I just need to break even.
Yeah. And you hope you make it up on the merch.
Yeah,
That's kind of
yeah.
what you hope for. You think,
That's
oh,
kind of what it's coming down to. We'll give you a
yeah.
merch table. Wow, thanks. That it gets getting to the stage where they'll charge you for the bloody merch table.
Well, some venues and festivals do, obviously. They do charge, if you don't know, guys, they do charge a percentage of your merch. So some festivals do that. Some venues do that. So I don't think in one, well, actually, I saw somebody, I won't mention their name, but I saw somebody last year at a venue in Birmingham. And I went backstage to talk to him and I said, where's your merch table? And he went, venue are putting so much percentage on it.
Yeah,
I said, forget it.
yeah, wow, yeah,
And I said, fair play, man, fair play. That's cool.
yeah, exactly. You have to admire that, but yeah, that's kind of goes back to this. the subject there about whoever loses money, it won't be the venue. The venue will find some way to be okay. And most of them are getting the beer money. And there's the other thing, of course. I'm old enough to remember the famous Glasgow Apollo, which was the go-to for all of us up here. And that was a dry gig, obviously. And to this day, unless somebody physically buys me a drink and hands me one during a gig, if I'm up the back chatting to somebody or something, I'll say thank you and I'll take that drink. But otherwise, I don't drink at a gig. Because for me, it's about the music, it's the experience, it's about that connection. I can't comprehend of having 3 or 4 drinks during a gig. And again, that's not a knock because that's simply the culture. That's simply where we are. It's part of the deal now. You're almost going out with your mates to have a few drinks and listen to some music. That's just the situation. So yeah, so the venues are doing okay as far as selling their booze over the counter. And then, as you say, maybe a wee surcharge on your merchandise, etc. So they're all right. But it goes back to again, how many times now? How broken is this record now? It's the artist is last in line. And that's it's just something I've over the years since I started fabrications, and certainly in the last few years, I stop, sit down, and think, how did we get to this? How did we arrive at this point? Why did nobody somewhere with a modicum of power say, whoa, 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 not a chance in hell. This is inherently wrong. This cannot happen. There was never legislation in place. I mean, Spotify is just the final point, if you like, if you go back to Napster and where it developed from there to Spotify.
Yeah.
Why did nobody think we need to have some online digital application of the law here? So things, certain things can happen, that's fine. And certain other things cannot happen. There's a cap on how much these companies can make, or there's a minimum in what the artist can make. But too late. As you said, the genie's out the bottle and he's not going back in.
No, and that's a problem. And as I say, like you just said, oh, like we're having a big moan, and I guess like what I wanted to do with this next series of podcasts, which is what I started trying to do with the first series, and it kind of worked and it kind of didn't, was the conversation the artists have backstage is what we're doing now on this podcast. So basically, it's inviting all you listeners out there to hear what we're really saying. So we're sorry if we come across moaning. We don't mean to. We're just trying to be honest and just have an honest discussion about it. And the trouble is, the music industry has existed on a smoke and mirrors level for so long, with everyone going, "Yeah, it's great, it's great, it's great," and that being the norm because you had to make yourself look bigger than what you were. That this is sometimes I think it's just not. It is starting. The truth is starting to come out, but it's kind of just trickling. So artists have also come to me and said, we need to talk about this. We need to get this out there. Quite big artists. So that's why we're here, basically. We're not having a moan. We're just sort of going, you know what? This is actually what we talk about. So if you want to hear it, tune in. If you don't,
you're right. It's a legitimate vent, I would call this, because this is the world in which you and I operate.
Yeah.
PA. So all we're doing is telling it like it is. But I get why, and this goes back to something else we mentioned earlier about the heritage acts, the Arena Rock, the Glastonbury's, etc., the big names. People won't really understand that because they look at BBC and they see these shows, they see the events, they see all the bigger bands doing well. They say, I don't understand this moan about nobody making money in music. Look at all these artists doing phenomenally well. You're absolutely right. There are a significant amount of artists doing phenomenally well. I would reckon, without having the abacus out, it's probably about 0.5 of 1% of the music population of the world that's doing well.
I think Colin's got all the figures actually, because he's a facts and figures man. So I am going to interview him as well, and we'll get those figures. We'll get those figures in.
I would love to see that. I really would, because that's the problem. It's that whole thing about that's the tip of the iceberg. What you see that's working is above the water. When you look below the waterline, all of us are paddling for dear life to try and come up and get a breath every so often. Yeah, it's got to be 99.5%. It has to be something like that in the great scheme of things,
It's
but all I can say is that all of us, whether we're writers in PR or press, or literally just going out to the gig to support the gig, to go and see somebody, and people like your good self, long may it continue for as long as we can make it continue. That's all I can say, because I mean, interestingly enough, maybe a nice way to wrap up. We talked about honesty and integrity. What you see and hear from Rebecca Downs on the band is what you get. And so, interestingly, I personally think, and this is me coming back, forget the conversation we're having just now, just as a listener and a music fan, I think you have got better every album by some long way. For example, I think your very first album was almost a demo in the sense it was showing you all the facets of what Rebecca Downs can do and all her styles. So I didn't think it was again, here we go, it wasn't a flawless, exceptional, awesome 10 out of 10 album, but it presented Rebecca Downs. It was almost, we talked earlier about the A&R guy. If we had an A&R guy, he would say, pick 5 or 6 songs from there. Here's a new artist, here's a new talent called Rebecca Downs. I think we have a chance with this lady if she gets the right chance, the right opportunity, and talks to the right people. And then you've continually stepped up. And your last couple of albums have been exceptional. And that goes back to your point about being true to yourself, because you're not bowing or kowtowing to the blues police or the blues fraternity or the rock fraternity. You and Steve are writing music that you feel strongly about and you hope makes an impact. And it doesn't matter if it's atmospheric, if it's a ballad, if it's rock and roll, if it's blues, if it's rootsy, if it's swampy, if it's a song, as you have done, that Adele could take and be #1 in about 25 countries. There is some exceptional stuff there. So my point is, if I can write honestly about the trials and tribulations of Rebecca Downs to where you were to where you are now, you just hope that people start to buy into that are listening and go, yeah, Rebecca Downs, maybe this is somebody I should be checking out. And you hope that ripple effect goes to the other tens and twenties and hundreds and probably thousands of artists that deserve that same exposure. So, as I say, we'll just keep fighting the good fight as long as we can fight that good fight.
Well, that's I'm very humbled by you saying that. I really am. And it is artists should evolve, shouldn't they? It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
you should grow. I think there's been a lot of discussion between me and Steve and Colin about, well, do we still do this?
Mm-hmm.
Do we still perform live? Do we still release music? We've written another album, so we're going to release it. I'm honest, I don't know where we'll be, after that. I don't know.
Yeah,
We're still writing songs, we're still doing it. It's what we do. We write songs for different things as well, but I don't know where we'll be. I still want to perform. I don't know in what capacity,
yeah,
I'll be allowed to do that in. But we love what we do. And we're grateful to do it. We're really happy to do it, and everything has been a choice, and you make a choice, don't you?
that's
So that's
exactly it.
that's
Yeah,
the way it is. But what we really hope is that, I mean, just like you, Ross, that we can continue enjoying what we do and be honest about it and legitimate, and just, yeah, just keep going for as long as we can, and we hope that new people will come and join us.
exactly
Maybe
that.
they will.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Maybe, maybe it won't be glass half empty. Maybe there will be a turning point. And I've got fans who firmly believe that we have to hit this sort of low point for people to say, wait a minute, we could be losing the grassroots stuff here. I think, remember my parents and my grandparents talked about all the great bands they saw coming through? What happened to that? And that could be something that does happen. It could spin round and start to rebuild itself. It's not going to be immediate, but that would be the hope, and
Yeah.
it has to be that sort of almost rising phoenix like from the musical ashes for it to grow again. And maybe that's what has to happen. But yeah, you have to be positive. I mean, we are never going to lose music, obviously. And people like yourself and so many other bands, as I've said to so many artists and people that just love music, music enriches our lives immeasurably in so many ways. I just feel honored to be able to write about it and talk to people like you. As I said right at the start, for somebody that was somebody that was 45 years in architecture to look back at that site and some of my my own older recordings and look at the phone and see names like Paul Young and Michael Schenker and John Anderson and Dennis DeYoung and Steve Hackett on the phone, how the hell did that happen? You know, how in God's name did that ever happen? You know, but I am delighted it did, and I'm hoping it does continue for a good few years yet.
Absolutely. I hope it continues to, Ross. We need more of it. We need more sites like you. We need, we need more people like you, basically. That's what we need. But thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's
Been
my pleasure.
amazing. I know we could talk for hours and,
Yeah.
but thank you so much, Ross. You're an absolute star. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's my pleasure to be on this, and thank you so much for inviting me. I actually feel quite honoured. So, yeah, I hope the podcasts go well. I hope people kind of get the gist of them and what we're actually driving at, and maybe that's the spark that starts the fire. You know, that's all we can hope, that people start to buy into this and think, yeah, you know what, they've got a point. What can I do? You know, and if you can't do something, give one of us a shout. We'll take it from there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Ross. Thank you.
All righty. Until the next time.
Till the next time. Thanks so much to Ross for his time and insight. Even Ralph's enjoying it, as you can hear him squeaking his toy. There was a lot of food for thought in that discussion. Next week's interview will have a slightly different twist. I spoke to Walter Trout in Series 2, and we were both keen to speak again. Walter has a new album out, so our talk turned into something of a mix of a discussion about his new record, along with some of the wider aspects of the music scene. He's a great guy, I love him so much, and it's always lovely to have a chat, so do listen in. It's kind of a special kind of podcast. Thank you for listening or watching, and I'll see you next week.